Human nature is a labyrinth, intricate, paradoxical, and profoundly compelling. For centuries, philosophers, psychologists, and laypersons alike have peered into the depths of human behavior, seeking insight into what governs our actions, motives, and decisions. Why do people sometimes act against their own interests? Why do emotions frequently overshadow reason? How is it that the same individual can be both nurturing and self-serving? The answers are concealed in the subtle and sweeping forces we call the laws of human nature. This book invites you on a journey to decode these forces, to unveil the underlying principles that shape who we are and how we engage with the world. Each chapter delves into one of the 8 fundamental laws, exploring the hidden impulses, desires, patterns, and resistances intrinsic to every individual. While these laws are universal, their manifestations are unique for each person, sculpted by personal history, cultural excavation, and individual will. In the laws of human nature, understanding why people do what they do, you will encounter yourself in the mirror of self-awareness. Discover the peculiar realm where irrationality governs the mind, and unravel the subtle threads of narcissism that color our interactions. You will peer behind the many masks people wear, grasp the compulsive behaviors that pattern our daily lives, and confront the perennial human penchant for desire and comparison. You will find profound lessons in the pursuit of immediate gratification and, perhaps most importantly, understand the fierce defensiveness that compels us to resist change. This exploration is not merely an academic exercise. It is a practical guide for anyone seeking a richer, more empathetic relationship with themselves and others. When we comprehend the architecture of human nature, we cultivate compassion, a deep, tolerant understanding of why struggle and contradiction are embedded into every human experience. As you traverse these pages, may you find not just insight, but greater wisdom. Wisdom to observe yourself without judgment, to perceive others with empathy, and to negotiate the complexities of life with patience and authenticity. The journey ahead promises profound revelations. May it illuminate your path toward deeper self-understanding and harmonious connections. Let us begin our journey into the heart of human nature. Chapter 1. The Law of Self-Awareness, Knowing Your Own Nature. Self-awareness is the cornerstone upon which all personal growth and understanding are built. To truly navigate the labyrinth of human nature, one must first look inward, exploring the self with curiosity and honesty. The law of self-awareness asserts that everything begins with you, your thoughts, emotions, motivations, and actions. Knowledge of self is not merely recognition of strengths or weaknesses, but a holistic acceptance of your complexity, contradictions, and potential. In a world that rushes forward without pause, it is remarkably easy to become a stranger to oneself. External demands, societal expectations, and cultural norms often drown out the inner voice that seeks authenticity. Yet the process of self-discovery is both a privilege and a challenge. It requires a willingness to journey through discomfort, accept imperfection, and acknowledge the evolving nature of identity. The first step towards self-awareness is observation. Take note of your inner dialogues, the thoughts that arise when you face joy, disappointment, or challenge. Listen closely to your emotional responses. What triggers happiness, anger, sadness, or fear? Often, these emotions have roots in past experiences, unresolved conflicts, or aspirations. Articulating them, perhaps through journaling or reflective meditation, can reveal recurring patterns that shape your worldview. Self-awareness also entails understanding your beliefs and values. What principles guide your decisions, and how flexible are you when confronted with opposing viewpoints? Are your values inherited from culture and family, or have you examined and owned them independently? This kind of introspection helps you distinguish between your authentic self and the expectations imposed upon you. A deep understanding of personal triggers, the situations, words, or behaviors that evoke intense emotional reactions can transform how you approach conflict and communication. When you know your triggers, you can respond with intentionality rather than impulse. The cycle of response is interrupted, and space for growth emerges. Self-awareness, however, is not a destination, but a continual journey. Situations change, new experiences unfold, and with them, facets of oneself evolve. What mattered deeply in youth may lose significance in adulthood. Relationships, ambitions, and adversities all contribute to the redefinition of self. Embracing this fluidity allows for greater adaptability and resilience. In the context of relationships, self-awareness is the bedrock of empathy and authenticity. When you understand your motives, desires, and insecurities, it becomes possible to communicate honestly, set healthy boundaries, and accept others without projecting your internal struggles onto them. This, in turn, fosters genuine connection, one rooted in mutual respect rather than role-playing or hidden agendas. Yet self-awareness can be threatening. It requires acknowledgement of darkness as well as light. The shadow aspects, jealousy, insecurity, selfishness, or fear, are part of the human spectrum, and accepting them is the first step toward transformation. By bringing these elements into conscious awareness, their power diminishes, and the capacity for intentional change emerges. Practical steps for cultivating self-awareness include mindfulness practices such as meditation and breathwork, which anchor attention in the present moment. Regular self-reflection through journaling or dialogue with trusted confidants can help articulate inner conflicts and desires. Feedback from others, if received with openness rather than defensiveness, can also illuminate blind spots. The law of self-awareness is a gift. It opens the door to self-mastery, self-acceptance, and ultimately self-love. In knowing your own nature, you lay the groundwork for understanding others. You become the observer of your impulses, the architect of your growth, and the steward of your emotional landscape. The journey inward is the most courageous act a person can undertake, for it is in knowing yourself that you unlock the power to shape your destiny and build harmonious relationships. As you continue through the chapters of this book, remember, every observation, insight, and law begins and ends with self-awareness. It is the thread woven through the fabric of human nature, illuminating both your shadows and your light. Chapter 2: The Law of Irrationality: How Emotions Rule the Mind. Rationality is often considered the guiding star of human intelligence, the compass that directs our decisions and shapes societies. Yet, beneath the calm surface of reason lies an ocean of emotion, vast, unpredictable, and deeply influential. The law of irrationality reveals the undeniable truth. Despite our best intentions, emotions frequently govern our judgment, clouding clarity and steering behavior in unexpected ways. Recognizing the power of emotion is not to condemn human nature, but to understand its operating system. Emotions, far from being weaknesses, are evolutionary tools designed to help us navigate social landscapes, anticipate threats, bond with others, and make decisions quickly. Joy, fear, anger, sadness, and excitement are all signals, messages from the mind-body system that urge action or caution. Irrationality emerges when these signals overpower reason. Consider a moment when anger dictated your words, leaving regret in its wake. Or recall a time when excitement led to risky decisions, bypassing logical evaluation. Such moments are universal, woven into the fabric of every human experience. This is not a flaw, but a reflection of the complex interplay between emotion and intellect. Scientific research reveals that the brain's emotional centers, particularly the amygdala, often react faster than the rational cortex. This means that, in moments of stress, fear, or passion, decisions can be made before conscious thought is engaged. These emotional hijacks explain why people sometimes act out of character, fail to see the consequences of their behavior, or struggle to change harmful patterns. The law of irrationality asks you to observe your emotional responses without judgment. When a strong feeling arises, pause and interrogate its source. Is the emotion rooted in present reality or an echo of past wounds? Are you responding to facts or to stories and assumptions constructed by the mind? This practice of emotional inquiry creates space, allowing the rational mind to engage, balance, and reframe impulsive reactions. Irrationality is most pronounced in times of anxiety, excitement, or group dynamics. Social influence, such as the contagious energy of a crowd or the pressure of conformity, can amplify emotional responses, leading to collective irrationality. The mob mentality seen in protests, financial bubbles, or viral trends illustrates how powerful emotions can override individual reason. Understanding this law empowers you to navigate the world with empathy. When others act irrationally, it is not always a sign of malice or incompetence, but rather a reflection of emotional overwhelm. Responding with curiosity rather than criticism paves the way for meaningful dialogue and problem-solving. Strategies for counteracting irrationality include grounding techniques such as deep breathing, mindful observation, or brief periods of solitude that restore cognitive balance. Regularly questioning emotional narratives and seeking external perspectives can also illuminate areas where emotions might be distorting reality. Yet, irrationality is not the enemy. Emotions are essential for creativity, motivation, and connection. The goal is not to suppress emotion, but to harmonize feeling and reason. By recognizing when emotions dominate and inviting reason to the conversation, you cultivate both wisdom and compassion. Embracing the law of irrationality is an act of courage. It means accepting the messiness of human experience, forgiving yourself and others for emotional lapses, and choosing growth over perfection. Through this acceptance, you gain freedom, the ability to feel deeply and act wisely, navigating the currents of life with confidence and grace. Chapter 3. The Law of Narcissism. Seeing beyond the self. Narcissism, often synonymous with self-obsession or egotism, is a word that sparks discomfort and judgment. Yet seen through the lens of human nature, narcissism is not merely a pejorative label, it is an intrinsic part of the self, manifesting both as a survival strategy and as a potential obstacle to authentic connection. The law of narcissism suggests that every person, at some level, struggles with self-focus. This drive for significance, recognition, and validation is embedded in human psychology, designed to protect the ego, boost confidence, and motivate achievement. The desire to be seen, valued, and respected is universal. What transforms healthy self-regard into destructive narcissism is the default to self-interest at the expense of empathy. In everyday life, narcissism appears in subtle ways: the need to be right, the urge to dominate conversation, or the tendency to interpret events from a personal perspective. These moments reflect the ongoing negotiation between individual needs and collective well-being. Unchecked, they morph into patterns, habits of prioritizing the self over others, dismissing differing viewpoints, or seeking constant validation. Self-interest is not inherently negative. In fact, it is essential for survival, motivation, and personal boundaries. The challenge lies in balancing self-focus with awareness of others. Empathy, the ability to attune to someone else's experience, feelings, and needs, is the counterbalance to narcissism. When you perceive the world through another's eyes, your own perspective expands and connection deepens. Narcissism can take subtle or grandiose forms. Some individuals broadcast their self-importance, craving attention and admiration, while others withdraw into fantasies of superiority or victimhood. Both are defenses, strategies to protect a vulnerable core from rejection, criticism, or insignificance. Understanding this mechanism is crucial for cultivating compassion rather than condemnation. In our age of social media, narcissism is amplified. Platforms designed for validation and exposure encourage self-promotion, comparison, and envy. The constant feedback loop triggers anxiety about self-worth and fosters the illusion that happiness is attained through external approval. This cultural climate makes it even more important to ground oneself in authentic self-esteem, rooted not in accolades, but in self-acceptance and meaningful relationships. The journey beyond narcissism begins with honest self-reflection. Ask yourself, how often do I seek validation from others? Do I listen with openness, or do I prepare my own responses while others speak? Can I celebrate another person's success without feeling diminished? These questions illuminate the contours of your own self-focus and invite growth opportunities. Developing empathy is a practice of awareness. It requires intentional listening, genuine curiosity, and the humility to accept differences. When you cultivate empathy, narcissism's grip loosens. Relationships flourish, trust builds, and conflict becomes a space for understanding rather than competition. Ultimately, the law of narcissism is an invitation to balance. Own your strengths, nurture your needs, but expand your compassion. Seeing beyond the self is not a denial of self-worth, but an affirmation that all journeys are interconnected. Empathy, humility, and gratitude transform self-interest into collective well-being. In this dance of self and other, true fulfillment is found. Chapter 4. The Law of Role-Playing. The Masks People Wear. Human interaction is a theater, and every individual, knowingly or not, dons a series of masks for different audiences and situations. The law of role-playing reveals the profound truth that much of what we present to the world is a constructed persona, adapted to fulfill expectations, avoid conflict, or secure approval. The ability to play roles is essential for social harmony, but it also invites confusion, misunderstanding, and distance from our authentic selves. From childhood, we learn to adapt. We play the obedient student, the dutiful child, the loyal friend, or the ambitious professional. These roles are shaped by experience, culture, and necessity. Over time, some masks become second skin, so familiar that we forget they are, in fact, performances. Mask wearing is not deception, it is adaptation. Social norms demand certain behaviors: formality at work, vulnerability with loved ones, restraint in public. These conventions enable cooperation and reduce friction. Yet when masks become rigid, when we cannot shed them, even in safe spaces, we lose connection with authenticity and, by extension, with others. Role-playing is often motivated by fear of rejection, judgment, or failure. The perfect parent, the always cheerful friend, the unfailingly competent employee, these personas protect the self from vulnerability. Paradoxically, they also create emotional distance, as true feelings, desires, and struggles are concealed beneath layers of performance. Recognizing one's own masks is an act of courage. It requires honesty about where and why you perform, and whom you seek to please or protect. This inquiry allows you to evaluate which masks are helpful and which stifle personal growth. Are you performing out of genuine care or out of habit and anxiety? Does your role serve a purpose, or has it become a prison? Authenticity is a process, not a destination. It unfolds through incremental acts of vulnerability, speaking your truth, admitting mistakes, asking for help, or expressing unpopular opinions. These moments may provoke anxiety, but ultimately foster depth and trust in relationships. Society values conformity, yet the longing for authenticity persists. The tension between fitting in and standing out is a universal human experience. When you honor your genuine self while respecting social norms, you strike a balance that enables both connection and self-expression. The law of role-playing also invites empathy. When you observe others performing roles, whether in family, work, or public life, remember that behind every mask is a complex, striving individual longing for acceptance and understanding. Responding with compassion helps dissolve boundaries and encourages authenticity. In sum, masks are neither inherently good nor bad. They are tools, sometimes necessary, sometimes limiting. The task is to discern which roles serve growth and connection, and which can be laid aside in favor of real, unvarnished presence. When you do, you create room for deeper relationships and a fuller experience of your own humanity. Chapter 5, The Law of Compulsive Behavior, Patterns that shape lives. Beneath the surface of conscious decision-making lies a web of compulsive behaviors, repetitive patterns that insidiously steer thoughts, choices, and actions. The law of compulsive behavior asserts that much of human life is governed by unexamined habits, impulses, and conditioned responses. These patterns, though often invisible, mold identities and destinies, influencing everything from relationships to health and career trajectories. Compulsive behaviors originate as adaptive strategies. Children soothe anxiety by sucking their thumbs. Adults reach for technology in moments of boredom or stress. These routines provide comfort, predictability, and temporary relief, but over time they can become compulsions, driven by unconscious needs rather than deliberate choice. Recognizing compulsive behavior requires gentle introspection. Ask yourself, what actions do I repeat without thinking? When do comfort and routine transition into dependency? Do certain environments, people, or emotions trigger automatic responses? Bringing awareness to these habits is the first step toward transformation. The roots of compulsive behavior are complex, entwined with psychological, emotional, and neurological factors. History plays a role. Early experiences of neglect, trauma, or instability can foster compulsive coping strategies. Biology matters too. Dopamine-driven reward systems encourage the repetition of pleasurable actions, whether healthy or harmful. Society reinforces compulsive patterns. Cultural norms dictate routines. Scrolling through social media, binge-watching television, and shopping for relief from monotony. Advertisers exploit these tendencies, inundating individuals with stimuli designed to trigger unconscious desire and consumption. Compulsions are especially potent in the face of negative emotions. Anxiety, loneliness, frustration, and emptiness drive people toward quick fixes, food, substances, technology, or people, seeking escape from discomfort. While these behaviors may provide momentary solace, they often perpetuate cycles of shame, regret, and dependency. Breaking compulsive patterns requires both compassion and resolve. Shame, blame, and rigid discipline rarely work. Transformation unfolds through understanding, support, and practical strategies. First, acknowledge the behavior without self-condemnation. See it as a learned response, not a character flaw. Identify the underlying need or emotion driving the compulsion. Often unmet needs for connection, security, or stimulation fuel repetitive actions. Addressing these root causes through authentic relationships, creative pursuits, or self-care reduces the compulsion's grip. Create barriers to habitual behavior. If technology is a compulsion, set usage limits. If food or substance use is problematic, remove triggers from the environment. Replace harmful patterns with nourishing alternatives: movement, meditation, conversation, or creative work. Social support is crucial. Trusted friends, family, or professionals can provide perspective, accountability, and encouragement. Shared struggle fosters hope and reduces isolation. Remember, compulsive patterns do not dissolve overnight. Progress is incremental, marked by small victories and setbacks. Celebrate each step, forgive lapses, recommit to the journey. The law of compulsive behavior illuminates a universal human struggle. By acknowledging, understanding, and compassionately addressing patterns, individuals reclaim sovereignty over their lives, relationships, and futures. In breaking cycles, new possibilities emerge, rooted in intentional choice and authentic freedom. Chapter 6. The Law of Covetousness, Desire and Comparison. Desire is the engine of human ambition, creativity, and progress. Yet when desire mutates into covetousness, when comparison supplants appreciation, discontent festers, straining relationships and distorting self-worth. The law of covetousness reveals how longing and envy shape human behavior, driving both innovation and suffering. At its core, covetousness is comparison. The mind measures itself against others, yearning for what is perceived as lacking, resenting those who possess it. This impulse is ancient, woven into evolutionary history as a way to compete for resources, status, and survival. Modern life magnifies comparison. Social media and advertising bombard the senses with curated images of success, beauty, and happiness. The highlight reel of others becomes a mirror for inadequacy, fueling longing for their possessions, relationships, or achievements. Covetousness undermines gratitude. When attention fixates on what is absent, the abundance already present disappears from view. Relationships falter as partners compare each other to imagined ideals. Careers stall as individuals prioritize others' progress over their own growth. Self-esteem erodes under the pressure of endless comparison, yet desire is not inherently damaging. It can motivate learning, foster ambition, and inspire art or innovation. The challenge lies in balancing healthy aspiration with contentment, recognizing when longing becomes destructive envy. Navigating covetousness begins with awareness. Notice thoughts that dwell on comparison. Ask yourself, what do I desire, for whom, and why? Is this longing a reflection of authentic values or an unconscious response to social pressure? Cultivate gratitude as an antidote. Each day, name aspects of life you appreciate, relationships, abilities, experiences, or opportunities. This practice shifts focus from lack to abundance, tempering envy and fostering contentment. Challenge the illusion of perfection. The external achievements or possessions of others often mask hidden struggles, insecurity, or sacrifice. Recognizing the complexity behind appearances dissolves envy and builds empathy. Transform desire into inspiration. Rather than resenting others' success, learn from their journey. What qualities, habits, or choices contributed to their achievements? Can their progress motivate your own growth rather than foster inadequacy? Practice self-compassion. Comparison is a universal human experience. Noticing it without judgment allows space for change. Forgive yourself for moments of envy and recommit to gratitude and authentic aspiration. The law of covetousness is a call to reclaim joy. Celebrate your unique path, invest energy in self-actualization, and honor your own journey. In doing so, you free yourself from the prison of comparison and invite abundance into your life, rooted in appreciation rather than perpetual longing. Chapter 7. The Law of Short-Sightedness, the Trap of Immediate Gratification. Short-sightedness, the preference for immediate pleasure over long-term gain, pervades human decision-making. The law of short-sightedness explores why we fall into this trap and how we can cultivate foresight and patience. The allure of immediate gratification brain chemistry favors instant rewards. Dopamine surges at the prospect of a treat, praise, or escape, making short-term choices overwhelmingly attractive. From reaching for junk food to procrastinating on important projects, humans often sacrifice future happiness for present comfort. Advertisers, technologies, and cultural norms amplify this tendency, offering quick fixes at every turn. Recognizing short-sighted choices, reflect on areas of your life where immediate gratification has hindered progress, financial decisions, health habits, relationships. What emotions drive these choices? Fear, boredom, stress, or a longing for relief? Awareness of your triggers equips you to pause, an essential step towards long-term thinking. Cultivating foresight. Foresight demands empathy for your future self. Imagine the consequences of your decisions 6 months, 1 year, or 10 years ahead. What actions today could create stability, peace, or satisfaction tomorrow? Journaling, future letters to yourself, setting long-term goals, and visualizing success are practical techniques for cultivating patience and planning. Discerning priority and pleasure. Not all short-term pleasures are harmful. What matters is balance and intention. Allow yourself moments of joy and rest, but do not lose sight of greater aspirations. Ask, will this choice move me closer to my values or distract me from them? Course correct kindly, avoiding harsh self-judgment when you slip. Growth is gradual. Empathy for short-sightedness in others. Others are subject to the same forces: temptation, fatigue, anxiety. When someone succumbs to short-sightedness, respond with understanding rather than blame. Offer perspectives, mentorship, and support that highlight long-term benefits. Sustaining long-term vision build habits that reinforce foresight, regular reviews of goals, accountability partnerships, and rewards for delayed gratification. Celebrate your future wins, anchoring satisfaction in progress rather than impulsivity. The law of short-sightedness reminds you that the path to lasting fulfillment is forged, not found through daily choices. Practice patience and compassion for yourself and others. In doing so, you transcend the trap of the immediate, paving the way for enduring success. Chapter 8. The Law of Defensiveness. Why People Resist Change. Change is the only constant in life, yet it is the force many resist with tenacity and vigor. The law of defensiveness is woven into the very fabric of human nature, serving both as a protector and an obstacle. To truly understand this law, we must delve into the psychological roots and manifestations of defensiveness, exploring why it emerges, how it operates, and how it can be gently unraveled. At the heart of defensiveness lies a fear of the unknown. Change threatens the familiar shelters we construct, identities, routines, and beliefs that provide a sense of safety. When challenged, the mind instinctively recoils, marshalling arguments, justifications, or even aggression to defend its ground. These defenses often surface as denial, rationalization, projection, or outright resistance. Consider the employee who bristles at new company policies, the friend who resists feedback, or the partner who refuses to discuss relationship pitfalls. Defensiveness, in each scenario, is not merely stubbornness. It is a protective mechanism. Our inner world feels jeopardized, so we build emotional fortresses. This reaction is often unconscious, a learned response shaped by earlier wounds or criticisms that felt threatening. Neuroscience offers illuminating insight. The brain is wired to anticipate potential danger. When change approaches, the amygdala, the brain's fear center, fires up, alerting us to possible threats to our self-concept or stability. Even positive change, such as a promotion or new relationship, can activate these circuits. Defensiveness may manifest in several ways. Denial, refusing to acknowledge the reality of change, or minimizing its significance. Justification, rationalizing existing behaviors or situations to negate the need for change. Projection, blaming others for the discomfort triggered by change. Withdrawal, avoiding conversations, decisions, or environments that demand adjustment. Beyond the biological and psychological, cultural narratives play a role. Societies that prioritize certainty and tradition, or instill fear of failure, cultivate resistance to change. We inherit subtle messages. The status quo is safety, change is instability. Yet defensiveness also serves a vital function. It creates a pause, a moment to evaluate whether a proposed change is truly beneficial. It protects us from impulsivity, manipulation, or misguided decisions. Healthy skepticism can safeguard our values and boundaries. However, chronic defensiveness brings stagnation. When we grip too tightly, we forgo growth, innovation, and deep connection. Relationships become brittle, workplaces lose creativity, and individual lives fall into predictable patterns, starved of curiosity and evolution. Empathy becomes the antidote. If we acknowledge the fear beneath resistance, we can address it gently, fostering psychological safety. Rather than forcing change, attuned leaders, friends, and therapists invite exploration and engagement. They realize that people do not resist change itself. They resist the loss, uncertainty, or judgment they associate with change. In our own lives, cultivating self-awareness is crucial. Noticing when we feel defensive, naming the emotions, and exploring their sources can soften our rigidity. By inviting vulnerability, acknowledging our anxieties and hopes, we usher in transformation. The law of defensiveness teaches that resistance is not a defect, but a natural part of adaptation. When honored and understood, it becomes a gateway, not an adversary, to authentic change and enduring growth. Chapter 9, The Law of Envy, the hidden force behind resentment. Envy, though rarely spoken of openly, shadows much of human interaction. The law of envy reveals a covert power that shapes perceptions, decisions, and relationships. While envy is often vilified as a destructive emotion, it's fundamentally rooted in longing, a desire for something perceived to be lacking or unattainable within ourselves. From early childhood, we learn by comparison. Our siblings, peers, and idols become mirrors against which we measure worth and possibility. When these comparisons make us feel inferior or excluded, envy quietly flourishes. Unlike anger, envy is subtle. It can linger beneath the surface for years, disguised as criticism, indifference, or even misplaced admiration. Envy's social manifestations are varied: resentment, hostility toward those possessing desired qualities or resources, sabotage, undermining or obstructing others' achievements, imitation, mimicking style, behavior, or choices in an attempt to gain parity, withdrawal, pulling away from relationships to avoid pain or discomfort triggered by envy. Yet envy is not inherently malicious. At its root is a yearning to be seen, valued, and fulfilled. When denied or repressed, envy turns toxic and corrosive. When acknowledged, it can illuminate pathways toward growth. In the workplace, envy can distort team dynamics, sapping morale and collaboration. Employees may resent a colleague's promotion, leading to passive-aggressive behavior or disengagement. Similarly, friendships can unravel under the weight of unspoken envy, as achievements or happiness provoke discomfort rather than celebration. Society amplifies envy through media and culture. The endless parade of curated images and stories sparks longing for unattainable lifestyles, bodies, or relationships. The gap between reality and aspiration widens, producing insecurity and bitterness. In some cultures, envy is weaponized as gossip, blame, or rivalry, further dividing communities. The psychological impact of envy cannot be overstated. Chronic envy erodes self-esteem, distorts judgment, and disturbs inner peace. It can lead to anxiety, depression, and self-sabotage. The mind fixates on perceived lack, overlooking opportunities for gratitude and joy. Transformation begins with radical self-honesty. Naming envy, admitting its existence, releases its hold. Compassion emerges when we recognize that behind envy is pain, often born from rejection, inadequacy, or unrealized dreams. By tending to these wounds, we shift from comparison towards self-acceptance. Empathy offers another dimension. Recognizing that everyone struggles with envy, we cultivate understanding rather than condemnation. Sharing vulnerabilities reduces isolation, making space for authentic connection. Instead of competing for validation, we can support and celebrate each other. Constructive envy is possible. When harnessed, envy becomes inspiration, a prompt to pursue growth, develop skills, or clarify values. It draws attention to what truly matters, nudging us from passive longing into creative action. The law of envy invites us to examine our hidden resentments, acknowledge the hurt they signify, and transform longing into compassion and ambition. In doing so, we release ourselves from the shackles of comparison, forging deeper relationships with others and ourselves. Chapter 10. The Law of Grandiosity, the Dangers of Overconfidence. In every epoch, stories abound of individuals whose overconfidence led them to brilliance, and often to ruin. The law of grandiosity explores the subtle line between healthy self-assurance and dangerous hubris, inviting reflection on why humans are drawn to inflated self-belief and the shadow it casts over judgment and relationships. Grandiosity stems from two intertwined sources: the internal hunger for significance and the external encouragement of achievement, admiration, or praise. Early affirmations, success, or even compensatory fantasies in response to insecurity can inflate one's sense of worth, creating an exaggerated self-perception. Social contexts fuel grandiosity. Celebrity culture, competitive workplaces, and digital media reward boldness and self-promotion. The internet enables even the ordinary to cultivate personas of expertise or fame. In such ecosystems, humility is often seen as weakness, and bravado becomes the standard currency. Grandiosity, when unchecked, gives rise to several perilous outcomes: risk-taking, underestimating dangers, or overestimating abilities, leading to reckless decisions, dismissal of others, discounting advice or criticism, believing oneself to be uniquely qualified. Isolation, eroding relationships through arrogance or inability to collaborate. Self-sabotage, engaging in overambitious projects and facing inevitable collapse or failure. Psychological wounds often lurk beneath grandiosity. The drive to appear invulnerable or superior may hide deep-seated fears of inadequacy or rejection. Grandiosity becomes a mask, a way to ward off painful emotions by projecting an image of invincibility. History is replete with cautionary tales. Powerful leaders, artists, and innovators who soared on grandiose wings frequently crashed when reality asserted itself. Their downfall teaches that unchecked confidence breeds blindness to limits, erodes empathy, and can ultimately destroy what was built. Yet, grandiosity is not always destructive. Healthy self-confidence fueled by competence and self-knowledge is essential for growth and achievement. The key lies in discernment, in distinguishing between genuine capability and the seductive lure of omnipotence. How, then, can we recognize and temper grandiosity? Self-awareness is foundational. Regular reflection on motives, abilities, and limitations helps ground the psyche. Seeking honest feedback, embracing humility, and learning from setbacks foster emotional balance. Empathy plays a critical role. Understanding that every person has strengths and vulnerabilities creates a culture of mutual respect, discouraging the allure of superiority. Leaders, mentors, and peers can model humility, openly sharing failures and uncertainties to counteract grandiosity. It is also vital to question societal norms that reward inflated self-worth. Valuing collaboration, vulnerability, and humility in families, schools, and workplaces diminishes the appeal of grandiosity, creating space for authentic confidence. The law of grandiosity reveals that overconfidence, while intoxicating, masks deeper needs and exposes us and those around us to risk. By embracing self-awareness and empathy, we can harness confidence without falling prey to its dangers, forging a path of wisdom, connection, and growth. Chapter 11. The Law of Gender Polarity, Balancing the Masculine and Feminine Energies. Human nature carries within it a dynamic dance of energies traditionally labeled as masculine and feminine. The law of gender polarity unpacks the profound interplay between these forces, challenging binary stereotypes and offering a compassionate lens through which to view balance. identity, and harmony. Masculine energy is often associated with action, logic, independence, strength, and assertion. Feminine energy, on the other hand, is linked to intuition, empathy, receptivity, nurturing, and collaboration. Both reside in every human being, irrespective of gender, shaping the way we think, feel, and relate. Cultural narratives have long enforced rigid roles, often suppressing natural expressions of these energies. Men are taught to reject vulnerability. Women are instructed to forsake assertiveness. Such conditioning breeds internal discord and external conflict. Individuals struggle to honor their full selves, and societies deprive themselves of balanced leadership, creativity, and compassion. The law of gender polarity encourages a shift from exclusion to integration. When we embrace both masculine and feminine qualities, we become whole. A woman who cultivates assertiveness and a man who develops emotional intelligence enrich their lives and relationships. Organizations that foster collaboration and strategic action create resilient and innovative cultures. The psychological dimension is equally vital. Suppressing one's natural energies leads to frustration, anxiety, and identity confusion. For example, a boy prohibited from expressing sadness may grow into a man unable to connect emotionally. A girl discouraged from ambition may struggle with self-worth and fulfillment. Healing comes when these energies are allowed to coexist, transforming inner division into unity. Relationship dynamics are profoundly shaped by gender polarity. Healthy partnerships thrive on mutual respect, fluidity, and the honoring of both energies. When either partner becomes polarized, dominating or withdrawing, the bond suffers. Communication, empathy, and openness enable both to express their unique energies without fear or shame. In broader society, balancing gender polarity challenges discrimination and inequality. It advocates for choice, freedom, and authenticity. Men and women and all gender identities need safe spaces to express their full humanity, whether that means leading, nurturing, inventing, or feeling. Empathy is foundational. Honoring the journey of each person fosters acceptance. Stories, conversations, and education that celebrate diversity and expression dismantle harmful stereotypes and cultivate safe communities. Practically, the law of gender polarity invites introspection. Which energies do you naturally express? Which do you suppress? What cultural messages shape these tendencies? By reflecting and experimenting, journaling, therapy, creative pursuits, we unlock latent potentials. Ultimately, the balance of masculine and feminine energies is not just a personal quest. It is a collective imperative. When we weave both into the fabric of our lives and societies, we become more resilient, creative, and compassionate, forging a world in which every human can be fully themselves. Chapter 12, The Law of Aimlessness, Finding Purpose in a Distracted World. Modern society is a whirlwind of distraction. The law of aimlessness illuminates the struggle to find direction and meaning amidst torn attention spans, endless choices, and external pressures. Beneath our busyness often lies a deep sense of aimlessness, a drift that saps motivation, clarity, and fulfillment. Aimlessness is not simply a lack of goals. It is a condition where goals lose resonance, motivation wanes, and life feels unmoored. This state emerges from many sources: information overload, shifting social norms, traumas, or the pressure to measure up to idealized standards. The result is a persistent restlessness, always moving, never arriving. Psychologically, aimlessness reflects a disconnection from inner values. When we live in reaction to external demands, neglecting our unique passions and strengths, our days become empty routines. The mind seeks stimulation, but the heart yearns for meaning. Social structures intensify this crisis. Education systems, workplaces, and media increasingly emphasize productivity over purpose. We are taught to chase milestones, grades, promotions, possessions, but rarely challenged to examine our true aspirations. The illusion of choice, fueled by technology, often leaves us paralyzed rather than empowered. Aimlessness is also a symptom of unresolved pain. Loss, disappointment, or existential questioning can strip life of purpose, leading to apathy or escape into addiction, fantasy, or withdrawal. Yet aimlessness offers a turning point. When recognized, it can prompt a profound search for authenticity. The journey begins by acknowledging dissatisfaction without judgment. What feels empty? What, if anything, makes the heart come alive? Self-reflection is key. Journaling, meditation, therapy, or meaningful conversations can unlock buried interests and dreams. Exploring new experiences, art, nature, relationships, service, can reignite passion and curiosity. Often purpose emerges not as a grand revelation, but as a gradual unfolding through engagement and experimentation. Empathy again becomes vital. Many struggle with aimlessness at some stage. Rather than condemning or comparing, we can offer support, encouraging honest exploration and patience. Purpose is not a static destination, but a dynamic process. It evolves as we grow and change. Recognizing this releases the pressure to arrive and allows space for curiosity, play, and transformation. The law of aimlessness reminds us that direction is found by listening within, honoring our needs, desires, and values. When we find even a spark of purpose, the world reawakens, energy returns, relationships deepen, and life once again becomes an adventure worth pursuing. Chapter 13. The Law of Conformity, the Pull of the Group Mind. Humans are innately social. Belonging is a primal need. The law of conformity explores the powerful force that draws individuals into alignment with the collective, often at the expense of personal truth. Autonomy and creativity. Conformity is driven by fear of rejection, isolation, or conflict. Social groups, from family units to global organizations, reinforce norms and punish deviation, creating invisible boundaries around behavior, belief, and appearance. We internalize these boundaries early, equating acceptance with safety. The mechanisms of conformity are both overt and subtle. Imitation, mirroring peers to avoid standing out. Obedience, complying with authority, even against personal values. Silence, withholding dissenting opinions to maintain harmony. Self-censorship, editing thoughts and expressions to fit the prevailing narrative. Conformity nurtures cohesion, stability, and predictability. It creates shared identity and minimizes friction. However, when unchecked, it stifles innovation, integrity, and individuality. History's greatest advances emerged from those who dared to defy the group mind. Psychologically, the tension between belonging and authenticity is acute. We crave acceptance, yet suffer when forced to betray our truth. This dissonance can lead to anxiety, depression, and existential crisis. Society often valorizes conformity, linking it to patriotism, loyalty, or professionalism. Those who resist are branded as rebels, eccentrics, or threats. Cultural messaging through schools, media, and religion shapes our understanding of what is normal. Empathy provides a way forward. By recognizing the pain and risks of nonconformity, we can support those who choose authenticity. Creating inclusive spaces, fostering dialogue, and celebrating diversity weaken the hold of the group mind. Practically, balancing authenticity and belonging requires courage and reflection. What values do you compromise for acceptance? Where do you feel silenced? What risks are involved in speaking or living your truth? Small acts of authenticity, honest conversation, creative expression, advocacy build resilience and liberate the self. The law of conformity teaches that while belonging is essential, authentic living demands discernment. By honoring both the need for community and the imperative for individuality, we cultivate societies that thrive on unity without sacrificing creativity or integrity. Chapter 14, The Law of Aggression, the Subtle Art of Power and Dominance. Aggression is often misunderstood. Many associate it solely with outward acts of violence or hostility, yet it is an energy far subtler, diffused throughout the very fabric of human interaction. The law of aggression teaches that power and dominance are not outliers. Rather, they are enduring aspects of how we relate to ourselves and others. At its core, aggression is the driving engine of survival. In the animal kingdom, it manifests visibly. The lion's roar, the pecking order of chickens, the territorial battles of wolves. In humans, it may appear more veiled, filtered through centuries of societal evolution. Here, aggression dons the clothes of ambition, assertiveness, competition, and sometimes manipulation. Yet the true artistry lies in the subtlety. Consider a boardroom discussion. Rarely do participants shout or brawl, but the pursuit of dominance is palpable. Words are measured, silence is loaded, alliances silently forged. The winner isn't always the loudest, but often the one who most skillfully navigates these unseen currents. The person who perceives unspoken vulnerabilities, anticipates objections, and asserts their influence with calm certainty. Aggression also masks itself. The cleverest forms are often indirect. Passive-aggressive comments, the strategic withholding of information, the calculated display of deference masking deeper ambitions. These tactics leverage confusion, guilt, or shame to accomplish what brute force never could. Understanding this law helps us see the undercurrents at play in daily life. Familial disputes over inheritances often have less to do with money and more with long-standing battles for dominance. Social hierarchies in schools, workplaces, and even friendships echo our ancient instincts to belong, to rise, to assert, or to defer. But is aggression inherently destructive? Not always. Channeled constructively, it fuels achievement, innovation, and justice. The activist confronting injustice, the entrepreneur pioneering a bold idea, the athlete striving for victory, all harness aggression's energy toward higher aims. The task, then, is not to banish aggression, but to understand and transmute it. Empathy becomes crucial. Recognizing the triggers, threat, insecurity, betrayal, can help us respond with wisdom rather than reflex. Understanding our own aggressive impulses, we become less likely to project them unconsciously onto others. We can then engage in what might be called conscious combat, asserting our needs and boundaries without dehumanizing the other. The law of aggression ultimately asks us to examine our power relationship. It invites us to wield influence ethically, to recognize dominance patterns in ourselves and others, and to choose, where possible, the path of creative rather than destructive force. This law is within every human exchange, waiting for the light of awareness and the guidance of conscience. Chapter 15, The Law of Repression, The Shadow Within. Every human harbors a shadow, a realm of hidden and repressed emotions, memories, and impulses. From our earliest days, we are taught which parts of ourselves are acceptable and which are not. Over time, what is deemed unacceptable is pushed deep into the corridors of our unconscious, where it quietly shapes our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. This is the terrain of the law of repression. Repression is not simple forgetting. It is a purposeful, if unconscious, act of concealment. The child who learns that anger is dangerous might repress their rage, covering it with politeness or indifference. The adult who was shamed for being vulnerable might bury their need for connection, wearing masks of independence or cynicism. As years pass, these repressed parts grow stronger in darkness, even as we become less aware of their existence. The shadow within is not innately evil. Rather, it contains parts of ourselves that have been exiled for the sake of acceptance or survival. Yet, as Carl Jung observed, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Our repressed feelings and impulses cannot remain buried forever. They leak out in dreams, slips of the tongue, inexplicable anxieties, or even illness. They may emerge as projections when we see in others those very qualities we loathe, fear, or deny in ourselves. Societies, too, have shadows. Entire cultures repress uncomfortable truths about history, injustice, or vulnerability. These collective shadows manifest in prejudice, scapegoating, or cultural taboos. The collective repression finds its release in outbursts, revolutions, scandals, or sudden cultural shifts. Personal healing begins with courage, the willingness to turn inward, to sit gently with what was once banished. This is not easy work. It asks for honesty, to name the shame, rage, envy, need, or grief we have long denied. Paradoxically, accepting these parts liberates tremendous energy. The repressed transforms, giving way to creativity, insight, and compassion. To approach the shadow within with empathy is to dissolve the illusion of separation within ourselves. We find that what we hide in shame is often a universal human experience. Compassion for ourselves breeds compassion for others. The law of repression reminds us what we bury can be our undoing or our undoing's end. In the gentle act of facing our inner darkness, we are offered something rare, the gift of wholeness. Chapter 16. The Law of Persuasion. Understanding influence and manipulation. Every day, the subtle force of persuasion weaves through our lives. Whether in the dazzling lights of advertising, the sway of a charismatic leader, or the gentle insistence of a loved one, we are incessantly bathed in attempts to shape our thoughts, deeds, and desires. At the root of persuasion lies an ancient survival mechanism, the ability to align with the group, to be swayed by signals of authority, trust, and belonging. This mechanism is neither inherently negative nor positive. It simply exists, a neutral tool with the power to construct or destroy. The law of persuasion encompasses both influence and manipulation. Influence acts with transparency, often seeking mutual benefit or a clear understanding. Manipulation, by contrast, cloaks itself in subterfuge, aiming to control by distorting reality or preying upon vulnerabilities. History is rife with persuasive figures, some celebrated, others reviled. Consider the speeches of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., which inspired hope and mobilized millions with a vision of justice. Contrast this with the manipulative propaganda methods of despotic regimes, wrapping lies in emotional appeals to instill fear or compliance. How are we influenced? The techniques are myriad, appealing to emotion rather than logic, repeating messages until they seem familiar and true, employing social proof, the bandwagon effect, or leveraging authority. Even silence and the artful withholding of information can serve as persuasive tactics. Understanding these methods is crucial for both self-protection and ethical influence. The person who knows their triggers, loneliness, fear, desire for approval, is less likely to be seduced by spurious arguments. Likewise, a leader aware of the immense power of persuasion can deploy it judiciously, striving to inform and inspire rather than deceive. The digital age has amplified these dynamics. Social media platforms, algorithms, and influencers commodify attention and accelerate the spread of persuasive messages. The speed and reach are staggering. So too can be the consequences: polarization, misinformation, and erosion of trust. Yet persuasion is not to be spurned. Human progress depends upon our ability to inspire, to build consensus, to advocate for change. The ethically persuasive person unites honesty with empathy, balancing conviction with humility. Ultimately, the law of persuasion urges us to bring consciousness to the influence we wield and to the influences we permit into our own minds. With this awareness, we can reclaim agency, discern truth from manipulation, and contribute to a culture of transparent and life-affirming communication. Chapter 17, The Law of Generational Cycles, Patterns that Repeat Through Time. History, it is said, may not repeat itself, but it often rhymes. The law of generational cycles charts the rhythms of human experience unfolding across time. cycles of opportunity, crisis, renewal, and stagnation that echo in both families and societies. At first glance, our personal struggles seem unique. Yet as we probe deeper, patterns emerge, echoes of parents, grandparents, entire lineages repeating unspoken dramas. Perhaps an unresolved grief takes root in one generation, surfacing as depression or anxiety in the next. Or a family's legacy of stoicism begets emotional distance in children, who must then labor to reclaim vulnerability and connection. On a larger canvas, civilizations rise and fall, nations oscillate between periods of progress and retrenchment, values and beliefs shifting in response to changes won or losses suffered. Sociologists and historians speak of cycles lasting 80 to 100 years, a human lifespan, wherein societies revisit similar challenges anew. These cycles serve both as warnings and opportunities. When trauma goes unaddressed, it propagates silently, compounding through the generations. But awareness breaks the chain. The generation that turns inward, naming and processing the old wounds, disrupts the cycle, birthing possibilities unimaginable to those who came before. Why do these cycles persist? The answer lies partly in the unconscious, the transmission of behaviors, beliefs, and attitudes that seep from parent to child, mentor to protege, leader to follower. Cultural memory is embedded not only in stories and rituals, but in silences, prohibitions, and the unspoken. Yet there is hope. The law of generational cycles offers a path toward healing and conscious evolution. Awareness is the first step. As we trace the lineage of our patterns, we encounter both sorrow and resilience, the gifts and burdens we inherit. The responsibility then falls upon each of us to sift through what has been handed down, to mourn what was lost, to celebrate what endures. In this way, we become not just heirs, but stewards, active participants in the unfolding story of humankind, with the power to compose new verses for the generations yet to come. Chapter 18, The Law of Death. Denial, facing mortality to live fully. Death is the great equalizer, the universal certainty that shadows every life. Yet as a species, we are compelled to keep death at arm's length, building walls of denial to shield ourselves from its presence. The law of death denial describes this paradoxical relationship, how ignorance or avoidance of mortality can shape, and sometimes distort, the choices we make. From the dawn of consciousness, humans have crafted myths, rituals, and philosophies to grapple with the specter of death. Some have sought immortality through legend or legacy, others through literal or symbolic rebirth. Modernity cloaks death in euphemisms, tucking it away in sanitized settings, far from daily view. This denial is understandable. To stare directly at our finitude threatens terror and despair. Yet paradoxically, repression of death often results in forms of anxiety that haunt us all the more. It colors our need for control, the hoarding of time, money, or achievements, and fuels insatiable cravings for novelty or distraction. But there is another path. When death is acknowledged, not morbidly, but with clear-eyed acceptance, it clarifies and liberates. We begin to distinguish what is urgent from what is important. Trivial concerns drop away. Love and gratitude deepen. Consider the teachings of many wisdom traditions. It is by remembering the brevity of life that we are impelled to live authentically, to choose legacy over distraction, presence over pretense. Those who embrace mortality often develop greater empathy, a sense of stewardship, and an urgency to mend or heal rifts with others. Death denial, at the collective level, breeds policies that postpone reckoning, economic debt, environmental plunder, even war. Societies that cannot face endings find themselves at the mercy of cycles they neither recognize nor control. To confront death is ultimately to affirm life. The law of death denial implores us to look without flinching at our impermanence, and in so doing, to craft lives of meaning, beauty, and connection, lives that matter not because they last forever, but because they are lived fully now. Chapter 19. The Law of Transcendence, Rising Above Human Nature. Transcendence is the art of moving beyond the limitations of instinctual patterns, of seeing oneself not as a passive subject of evolutionary drives or cultural scripts, but as an active participant in the unfolding of consciousness. The law of transcendence calls us to rise, to become aware of our conditioning, and to surpass it. This is no easy task, for our deepest habits and biases are often invisible. Yet throughout history, individuals and movements have demonstrated the possibility, seeding new paradigms and expanding the frontier of what it means to be human. Transcendence begins with awareness, observing our instinctual reactions without being possessed by them. The person who notices the flare of anger, the urge to retaliate, or the pull of greed has made the first, crucial leap. From here, choice emerges, a space between stimulus and response, wherein we may rewrite the script. This principle is visible in acts of forgiveness, compassion, and creativity. The cycle is broken when a person chooses understanding over vengeance, or when empathy silences the drumbeat of self-interest. Transcendence does not mean spiritual bypassing or denying pain, but rather integrating suffering into a larger story. On the societal plane, transcendence fuels movements toward justice, equality, and peace. Communities that envision a different future, one not dictated by past hatreds or fears, plant the seeds of transformation. Despite setbacks, history demonstrates that progress, halting or uneven as it may be, is possible. Transcendence is a practice, not a state. A continual choice to rise above, to see through, to co-create new possibilities. At times, it may require solitude, at others, community. It is both a personal and collective endeavor, fostered by curiosity, courage, and care. Ultimately, the law of transcendence offers hope. The belief that while we belong to the crucible of human nature, we are not prisoners within it. In transcending, we honor both our origins and our highest potential. Chapter 20. The Law of Mastery. Becoming the author of your own story. Mastery is not domination over others, but instead the art of self-authorship, the commitment to shape one's own life with intention, awareness, and courage. The law of mastery is the culmination of all other laws. It asks us to step into responsibility, to become active directors of our internal and external worlds. To become the author of your story means learning the inner workings of your nature, your drives, your shadows, your strengths, and orchestrating them in service of a vision true to your deepest values. It's neither grandiosity nor self-absorption, but the thoughtful synthesis of self-knowledge and self-discipline. Mastery is a practice of iteration. It is found as much in setbacks as in triumphs, in the integrity to admit mistakes, to recalibrate, and to persist. The master is not the person who makes no errors, but the one who learns from every error, who greets challenge as an opportunity for growth. Communities, too, can practice mastery, cultivating cultures where individuals are empowered to contribute fully, voice dissent, and co-create shared meaning. Organizations and nations that value reflection, accountability, and learning demonstrate collective forms of mastery. This law is radical in its empathy. It recognizes the daunting nature of true freedom, that to choose one's life is to risk, to stumble, and to take loving responsibility for all that follows. It is a lifelong journey, opening with questions and closing, if we are fortunate, with wisdom and gratitude. In embracing the law of mastery, we are offered the final gift, not just understanding ourselves, but actively shaping destinies, personal and collective, that honor the complexity and beauty of being human. If you found this video helpful, inspiring, or entertaining, don't forget to hit that like button. And if you're new here, make sure to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss out on future content. Your support means the world. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below.